What is it about the dark that unsettles us? Is it simply the absence of light? Or is it the thought that maybe, just maybe, something is waiting for us when the lights go out? We tell ourselves we're safe in the dark, that nothing's there, that it's all in our imagination. But what if the shadows aren't empty? What if the darkness itself hides things we were never meant to see? In tonight's video, we're diving into real-life encounters with darkness. Stories from people just like you and me, who thought they were alone, until they weren't. These aren't urban legends. These aren't made-up campfire tales. These are experiences that left people questioning reality, and forever afraid of what comes out when the sun goes down. We'll explore the chilling night of a young woman trapped in a pitch-black parking garage, stalked by something she couldn't explain. We'll step into the silence of a rural farmhouse, where a family realized they weren't the only ones awake in the night. We'll follow a group of friends who dared to wander into an abandoned tunnel, only to discover that not all tunnels lead back to daylight. And if that wasn't enough, I'll share the eerie account of a driver who thought he was helping a lone traveler on the side of the road, only to find out some passengers never leave. Trust me, you don't want to miss a single second of what's coming. And before we step into the shadows together, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you never miss another night of terrifying true encounters. Every week, I bring you deeper into the unknown, and tonight, the unknown is darker than ever. So grab a blanket, turn off the lights, if you dare, and let's begin. Because these aren't just ghost stories. These are real accounts from people who faced the kind of darkness you can't escape. Not with light, not with logic, and maybe, not at all. She was tired. That kind of bone-deep exhaustion that settles in after a late shift. The city was already asleep, but she still had one more step before she could finally collapse into bed. Walking through the multi-story parking garage to her car, the building was almost empty. A hollow echo followed every footstep, bouncing off the cold concrete. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered, buzzing faintly like dying insects. She hated this garage, always had, but tonight, it felt worse, like something was waiting for her. As she made her way past row after row of silent cars, she slowed. Was that footsteps? Not hers. These were different. Soft, deliberate, and always just one pace behind. She stopped. The echo stopped. She turned sharply, heart thudding. Nothing. Just the dim glow of overhead lights stretching into the empty rows. Forcing a nervous laugh, she muttered to herself, "Don't be paranoid." But when she started walking again, the sound followed, steady, calculated, matching her stride exactly. If you're listening right now, think about it. What would you do? Do you call someone? Do you run? Or do you tell yourself it's nothing? Before we go further, make sure you subscribe, because the story only gets darker from here. She quickened her pace. The footsteps did too. Her throat felt dry, her palms sweaty against her purse strap. She reached into her bag for her phone, but the signal dropped to nothing, 0 bars. Of course, this garage was a dead zone. The lights above her hummed, then began shutting off, one by one, section by section, each thud of darkness closing in behind her. The pockets of light shrank, the shadows grew deeper, and her body screamed at her to move faster. And then she froze. Her car was just ahead, but something was leaning against it. A tall, impossibly thin figure, head bowed low, shoulders hunched. At first she thought it was a man, maybe a stalker waiting for her. But when she blinked, just for a second, it was gone. The space was empty again. Her pulse hammered in her ears. She wanted to believe it was her imagination, but every hair on her arms stood on end. That primal instinct that whispers, "You are not alone." The elevator dinged. She jerked her head toward the sound. The metal doors slid open with a groan. Empty. Nothing inside. No one had pressed the button. She backed away, toward her car, fumbling for her keys. Her hands shook so badly the fob slipped from her grip and clattered to the ground. The sound echoed like a gunshot. She crouched quickly, snatching it up, but as she rose, her headlights flickered on. She hadn't touched the remote. Her chest tightened. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out. She bolted to the driver's side, yanked the door open, and slammed it shut behind her, hitting the locks with trembling fingers. For a brief, fragile moment, she felt safe inside. Concrete walls, steel doors, glass windows. But then she heard it, a slow, dragging sound, like palms sliding across glass. Her eyes darted to the window, and there it was, a face, pressed against the glass. But it wasn't human. It was distorted, stretched, features twisted like melted wax. Its eyes were too deep, too hollow, its mouth too wide. It didn't move, just pressed closer, the glass groaning under its weight, as if it were trying to seep through the barrier between them. She screamed, fumbling with the keys, turning the ignition with shaking hands. The engine roared to life and she floored the gas. Tires screeched against the concrete as she sped out of the garage, heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst. Only when she hit the streetlights of the open road did she finally dare to glance at the windows. Nothing there. No face. No shadows. Just her own terrified reflection staring back. But the story doesn't end there. Weeks later, after she tried to forget, she finally took her car through a wash. That's when she noticed them. Along the driver's side door, long, deep scratches. Not like keys, not like vandalism. These were jagged, uneven, like claw marks. And the worst part? The scratches weren't just outside. They continued faintly inside the car door, etched into the lining. So what was it? A stalker who somehow vanished? Her exhausted mind playing tricks on her? Or did the darkness in that garage create something only she could see? I'll let you decide. But next time you're walking alone through a parking garage at night, ask yourself, are you sure those footsteps behind you are your own? And if you want to keep exploring true encounters like this, make sure you subscribe and stick around, because the next story will take us somewhere even darker. The Midwest is known for its endless fields, open skies, and the kind of silence you don't find anywhere else. Out there, miles from town, the nights are darker than most people ever experience. No streetlights, no passing cars, no glow of a city on the horizon, just blackness stretching in every direction. For one family, that silence and darkness was simply part of life. They were used to long nights on their isolated farmhouse, the wind brushing against the cornfields, the old generator humming faintly in the background. But one particular night, that silence was broken. And what broke it still haunts them to this day. It started with a sound scratching. At first, they thought it was an animal. A raccoon, maybe, or branches brushing against the siding. But the scratching wasn't random. It moved, window to window, room to room, almost as if something was circling the house. The father, a practical man, wasn't one to scare easily. He grabbed his shotgun, stepped onto the porch, and scanned the horizon. But outside, there was nothing. Just the endless black fields swaying gently in the night breeze. No animals. No intruders. Behind him, inside the house, the family dog growled low. Its fur stood up along its spine, lips curled back, teeth bared. But no matter how much the father coaxed, the dog refused to go near the windows. It backed into a corner instead, eyes fixed on the darkness outside, as if it knew something the humans didn't. The scratching continued, louder now, and then came the tapping. Not a polite knock, but a sharp, deliberate tap-tap-tap against the glass. It traveled along the house, from one window to the next, like someone or something was checking every entry point. The children, frightened, huddled together in the living room. Their mother tried to calm them, but her own hands trembled. Then the lights flickered. The old generator sputtered, struggling to keep power. Each time the bulbs blinked, the room was swallowed in shadows. And in those flashes of half-light, the children swore they saw faces pressed against the glass. Pale, grinning faces, smeared against the window pane. Every time the light steadied, the glass was empty again. But the moment the bulbs flickered, those faces returned. Smiling, watching, waiting. By now, the father was back inside, shotgun in hand, standing between his family and the windows. His voice was firm, but they could all hear the fear beneath it. "Stay away from the glass," he told them. And then the generator gave out. The entire house was plunged into total darkness. For a few seconds there was nothing. No light, no sound. Just the suffocating weight of pure blackness pressing against them. And then voices, low at first, whispering, echoing from every direction outside. Dozens of them, maybe more. The words weren't clear until they all began to blend, forming one chilling phrase. "Let us in." The children screamed. The dog barked furiously, then whimpered and hid beneath the couch. The father gripped his shotgun so tightly his knuckles went white, but he didn't fire. What could he shoot at when he couldn't even see what was out there? The whispers grew louder, closer, surrounding the house, and every window rattled as if invisible hands were pressing against them. The family huddled together in the center of the living room, wrapped in blankets, praying the darkness would end. Hours felt like days. None of them dared move. And then sunlight. The generator kicked back to life as the sun rose, flooding the rooms with weak morning light. The house was silent again. No whispers, no tapping, nothing outside the windows but fields and sky. For a brief, fragile moment, they thought maybe they had dreamed it. Maybe fear and exhaustion had played tricks on all of them. But then they stepped outside. The dirt around the farmhouse was covered in prints. Dozens of them. Bare, muddy footprints circling the house, pressed against the earth in tight rings. Small ones, large ones, some too long, some too narrow, as if they didn't belong to any human at all. They led nowhere. No trail in, no trail out. Just a perfect circle of footprints around the home. And in the window glass, faint smudges remained, as if faces had been pressed against them for hours. So what were they? People playing a twisted prank? Spirits drawn to the isolation of the farmhouse? Or something else? Something that only exists where the dark is at its thickest? The family never got an answer. But even years later, when they tell the story, they'll look out toward those endless fields and say the same thing. The night out here isn't empty. It never was. And if you're brave enough to keep listening, don't forget to subscribe, because the next story will take us even deeper into the dark. It was supposed to be a dare. That's how these stories usually start, right? A group of college friends, a Friday night with nothing to do, and the kind of overconfidence only youth and adrenaline can provide. The tunnel wasn't hard to find. A century-old drainage system on the edge of town, carved into the hillside like a gaping mouth. Locals whispered about it. Some said it had been sealed for decades. Others claimed strange sounds came from inside at night. But to these students, it was just the perfect place for a midnight thrill. There were 4 of them, armed with flashlights, nervous laughter, and bravado. One by one, they ducked into the tunnel, their beams of light cutting through the darkness. At first, it seemed harmless. The walls were damp, etched with graffiti from others who had dared to come before them. The ground sloped gently downward, water pooling in shallow rivulets beneath their sneakers. But the deeper they went, the quieter it got. No dripping water, no echoes of their footsteps, just silence. That's when the bravado started to fade. "Why's it so quiet?" one of them whispered. His voice sounded flat, like the tunnel swallowed the sound whole. They kept walking, but unease spread through the group like a disease. Each step felt heavier, as if the tunnel itself wanted them deeper inside. And then one flashlight flickered, sputtered, and died. "Great!" the guy holding it muttered, smacking it against his palm. Nothing. The tunnel grew darker. Moments later, another beam went out. Just like that, half their light was gone. Shadows pressed in closer, swallowing the walls, the ceiling, the air around them. They huddled together, the remaining beams shaking as they swept them across the tunnel. Every step forward felt wrong. Too quiet, too heavy. And then someone gasped. "Something touched me." They all whipped their lights around, shining them on each other. No one was close enough. No one had reached out. But he swore, voice trembling, that a hand had brushed across his shoulder. Cold, lingering. That's when they heard it. Footsteps. Not behind them, not from the entrance, but ahead. Deeper in the tunnel. Slow, deliberate steps echoing faintly. The problem? They were the only ones inside. Panic rippled through the group. The footsteps continued, steady, as though leading them further into the dark. One of them whispered, "We should go back." But before they could move, the last two flashlights flickered violently. Their beams sputtered, cutting in and out like dying stars. And then darkness. Total, suffocating darkness. The air grew colder. They could hear their own breathing, fast and shallow. And then, a scream. One of the students was yanked backward, their voice echoing in terror. The others scrambled, fumbling for the last working light, finally sparking it on. What they saw froze them in place. Their friend was being dragged into the shadows. Something pale and thin clutched his ankle, pulling him across the wet floor. Its body was bent, twisted, crawling backward on all fours, head tilted at an impossible angle. Empty eyes locked onto them. It hissed, mouth stretching too wide, before it disappeared deeper into the tunnel with their friend. The others surged forward, screaming his name, the flashlight beam bouncing wildly. And then they found him. He was lying on the ground, shaking violently, his ankle bruised but free. Whatever had grabbed him was gone. They didn't wait to question it. They ran. Their footsteps thundered against the silence, breath ragged, hearts pounding. None of them dared look back. When they finally burst into the cool night air, the relief was overwhelming. But their friend, the one who had been dragged, wasn't the same. At first, he refused to talk about it. But soon, the nightmares began. He would wake up screaming, insisting something was in the room with him. He stopped sleeping altogether, claiming the dark was following him, that it hadn't let go. His friends tried to convince him it was just fear, just trauma. But then they noticed the bruises on his ankle never healed. They deepened, darkened, as if invisible fingers still gripped him. Some places are built to carry more than water. Some tunnels don't just drain the earth, they drain you. And the question is, if you dared to step inside, would you come back out the same? If that gave you chills, make sure you subscribe, because the last story will take us onto a lonely highway, where a driver discovers that not every hitchhiker is human. Truck drivers see things most of us never will. Long stretches of highway, ghost towns, people wandering at odd hours. But one driver swears that what he saw on a lonely road at 3 a.m. wasn't a person at all. He'd been driving for hours, eyelids heavy, coffee barely keeping him awake. The highway was empty. Nothing but the hum of tires and the endless black swallowing both sides of the road. That's when his headlights caught something. A figure. Someone walking alone on the shoulder of the highway. No bag. No phone. Just a dark shape, moving slowly through the night. Against his better judgment, he slowed the rig, rolling down the passenger window. "You need a lift?" he called out. The figure nodded once and climbed into the cab. Their face was hidden by the hood of an old coat, shadow concealing every feature. They said nothing, just sat there, hands folded, staring straight ahead. The driver tried to make small talk. "Long way from anywhere out here," he chuckled nervously. Silence. The hitchhiker didn't answer. That's when the radio cut out. 1 second it was murmuring a late-night talk show, the next it was static. Harsh, grating static that filled the cab. The driver twisted the dial, but every channel was the same, static. Only after a long moment did it die completely, leaving the cab in dead silence. His skin prickled. Something wasn't right. At a red light, he risked a glance at the passenger seat. It was empty. His heart lurched. He snapped his eyes back to the road, then instinctively checked the rearview mirror, and froze. The mirror showed the hitchhiker sitting in the passenger seat, hood still pulled low, face lost in shadow. But when he looked directly beside him, the seat was bare. Hands trembling on the wheel, he forced himself to keep driving. The miles crawled by, the air in the cab growing colder, his breath fogging faintly despite the heater running full blast. Finally, he rolled to a stop at a lonely intersection. Not another car in sight. His knuckles whitened around the steering wheel. That's when he heard it. A whisper, low and rasping, from the empty passenger seat. "You shouldn't have picked me up." He whipped his head toward the sound, but the seat was empty. The cab felt lighter, suddenly warmer, as though whatever had been there was gone. He slammed the gas, barreling down the highway, desperate to put miles between himself and that intersection. By dawn, he had convinced himself he'd imagined it all. Sleep deprivation, paranoia, maybe he'd even dozed off for a second, hallucinating the whole thing. But when he parked to unload, he opened the cab door and saw it. A muddy handprint on the inside of the passenger door, clear as day. Some drivers pick up stories on the road. Some pick up memories. And some pick up things that don't belong in this world at all. So the next time you see a lone figure walking the highway at night, ask yourself, will you keep driving or stop? And if you're brave enough for more true encounters with darkness, make sure you subscribe, because what comes next is even harder to explain. Darkness takes many shapes. For one man, it came in the form of footsteps echoing across the empty garage, a presence that stalked him where no one else should have been. For another, it was the silent faces pressed against the windows of his home, watching, waiting, and never leaving. For those friends in the tunnel, the darkness wasn't just around them. It was alive. It swallowed their voices, their light, even their sense of direction, until the only thing left was fear. And for the driver on the empty highway, darkness rode shotgun. Not a passenger, not a person, something else. Something that left behind only a whisper and a muddy handprint. Each of them thought they were living an ordinary night. A shift at work, a drive home, a hangout with friends, a long haul on the road. But the truth is, darkness doesn't need a grand stage to reveal itself. It only needs silence, shadows, and time. Because darkness isn't just the absence of light. It's an invitation, an opening for the things that don't belong in the day. The question is, do they come to us, drawn by our fear and our attention? Or are we the ones who step too far into their territory when the sun goes down? Think about it. Every night we willingly surrender to it. We turn off the lights. We close our eyes. We let shadows creep across our walls and ceilings, telling ourselves they're harmless. But maybe that's when they're strongest. Maybe that's when they slip closest. And maybe that's when they're already in the room with us. The garage worker never saw who followed him. The family never learned why the faces came. The friends never truly escaped the tunnel. And the driver never forgot the whisper that warned him too late. So tonight, when you turn off the lights and let the darkness settle in, don't forget these stories. Because darkness is patient. It doesn't rush. It doesn't warn. It simply waits. And it's waiting for you, too. If you're brave enough, join me again for more true encounters with the things that hide where the light doesn't reach. Subscribe, share, and remember, every story comes from somewhere. And maybe the next one will come from you.